Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. It is Jackstown. So the MLB season is officially underway. We're about a week into it, and it's been a great season so far, and I know it's going to be another great season of baseball. But at the beginning of every sports season, it seems that a lot of people are talking about certain teams and players and trying to project into the future based on the now. We evaluate these teams and players, and we decide how good they're really going to be and how good they are right now. And so that got me the idea of coming up with a list of the most underrated players from every MLB team, specifically the most underrated player from each specific team. Now, of course, totally subjective, totally my opinion. I invite disagreement in the comments. Let me know who you think is the most underrated player from each MLB team. But for this video, I'm going to be giving you my opinion on who I think truly is the most underappreciated, under the radar player on each MLB team. So let's get into it, guys. Here you go. Starting off this list with the Arizona Diamondbacks, the most underrated player on their team, in my opinion, is Zach Gallen. Maybe it's because he's never been on a contending team, but Zach Gallen is a legitimate ace in my opinion. Maybe it's because he's never pitched more than 80 innings in a season, or maybe because he doesn't throw absolute gas, but in 152 career innings, he has a career 2.78 ERA with more strikeouts than innings pitched. Sounds like an ace to me that no one talks about enough. D-backs fans should be very excited when this dude comes back from injury. For the Atlanta Braves, their most underrated player is Ozzie Albies. First of all, it's surprising that he's only 24 because it feels like he's been around forever, but in his last two full seasons in 2018 and 19, Albies has averaged 104 runs, 24 homers, 79 RBIs, 14 stolen bases, and a 278 batting average. That's a five-tool star in the making, but sadly, being on a stacked team like the Braves with the likes of Freddie Freeman, Marcell Ozuna, and of course Ronald Acuna limits the amount of attention he gets, but he's a really good player. On the Baltimore Orioles, their most underrated player is Trey Mancini. I know the best hitter on most teams shouldn't be underrated, but being on the Orioles makes Trey Mancini underrated. The dude had 106 runs, 35 homers, 97 RBIs, and hit .291 in the last full season of baseball he had. I mean, what am I missing here? I know he missed all of 2020 with colon cancer, but he has nobly returned, and the last time he played, he put up superstar top 10 hitter numbers, but playing on the O's instead of, say, the Yankees keeps him out of this conversation, unfortunately. Don't worry, he'll remind people of his greatness this year. For the Boston Red Sox, I went with Kike Hernandez. Now listen, as a Dodger fan, I can vouch for my man Kike Hernandez, as besides his incredible personality, he's a really good baseball player. He may never hit for a great average, but his power is legit and he's a phenomenal defender who can play multiple positions. He never got a chance to be a full-time player in LA, but now he has that chance in Boston. Red Sox fans are gonna love this man. The most underrated player on the Chicago White Sox is Jose Abreu. Wait a minute, Jackstown. Why is the reigning AL MVP underrated? Well, I'll tell you why. On MLB.com's top 100 players list heading into this year, Abreu was ranked 31st. And on CBS Sports' list, he was ranked, 52nd? Talk about disrespectful. Forget that he's 34 and isn't a great defender. He's the reigning MVP and a great bet to lead the AL in RBIs once again, like he's done the last 2 years, and hit for a great average again, like his career 294 average suggests. Again, what am I missing here? There aren't many players I'd rather have at the plate with the game on the line than this guy, I'll tell you that much. The most underrated player on the Chicago Cubs is Zach Davies. Let me tell you guys something. What is pitching all about? Preventing runs, right? Zach Davies prevents runs. Forget the subpar strikeout rate, forget the not great velocity, and just remember he was top 10 in ERA last season with a 2.73 ERA and had a solid 3.55 ERA the year before. Davies just prevents runs, and what more could you ask for? But still, not many people talk about him, but they should. For the Reds, I went with Eugenio Suarez. He may strike out a lot, but Suarez is one of the best power hitters in the league. He hit 49 homers in 2019 and 34 the year before, and he's not even in the same conversation as some other power hitters. And it's not like he was just a power guy and not much else. He also hit 271 and 283 in 2019 and 18 respectively, which is very, well, respectable. For the Cleveland Indians, their most underrated player is Zach Plesac. I know he left the team during COVID and got in trouble last year, but in his 177 career innings, Plesac is 12-9 with a 3.31 ERA and 1.1 WHIP, which is very good. But he isn't talked about as one of the most solid starting pitchers in the league. He kind of feels like an afterthought, actually. For the Rockies, I decided to go with Garrett Hampson. This is more of a breakout candidate than an underrated player, but the stats don't really back up the fact that Hampson once was a highly ranked prospect with a great blend of power and speed. But he's looked great for this year and still has star potential, and many may not realize he is still capable of being exactly that, a star. In my opinion, the most underrated player on the Detroit Tigers is Matthew Boyd. Now, if you're a Tigers fan, you probably know how inconsistency has always been Matthew Boyd's biggest problem. He definitely has ace qualities though, with his electric fastball and pitch arsenal as a whole. In 2019, he had 238 strikeouts in just 185 and 1/3 innings, which is crazy. Hopefully one of these years he can put it all together because his run prevention numbers aren't indicative of how capable of a pitcher he is. The most underappreciated player on the Houston Astros is Michael Brantley. Most people probably view Brantley as not even a top 3 hitter on his own team, but in terms of pure hitting, he should rank among the best in the league. He's hit at least 300 each of his last 3 seasons and is a career 298 hitter. I'm sorry, but if I need a hit from anyone on the Astros, I might just want Michael Brantley at the plate more than anyone else, which seems to be an unpopular opinion, but that makes him underrated in my opinion. For the Kansas City Royals, I chose Whit Merrifield. On MLB.com's top 100 players, Whit Merrifield was ranked 77th. I'm sorry, but there aren't 76 players better than Whit Merrifield. He's like Brantley. He's one of the best pure hitters in baseball, and with a career 296 average, and he's hit over 300 in each of his last 2 full seasons with at least 88 runs and 20 steals in each of those 2 seasons. He's a great combination of hitting and speed on the base paths, along with his ability to play multiple positions as well. There's a reason why he's nicknamed 4-Hit Whit. He just hits, and then hits some more. He's a great baseball player and deserves a lot more recognition. For the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, I felt that the most underrated player was David Fletcher. Just to simplify it, Fletcher is a poor man's Whit Merrifield. He just hits, but with slightly less power and speed as Merrifield. He has a 290 career average, but also plays multiple positions. To be honest, it was tough to come up with someone on the Angels as they don't seem to have a ton of underrated players, but I think Fletcher is still the most underrated player on this team, and overall is still an underrated player. For the Los Angeles Dodgers, I went with Max Muncy. This was also tough because the Dodgers have a lot of great players and already get a lot of attention, but I think Max Muncy is still underrated. First, let's acknowledge that the Dodgers got him for nothing as the A's released him a few years back, and he has blossomed into a very disciplined power hitter with 35 homers in each of his last 2 full seasons and an on-base percentage of at least .374 in those 2 seasons. On most teams, he would be one of the 2 or 3 best hitters, maybe even the best hitter, but on the Dodgers, he's probably their 5th best hitter. But let's not forget how good he is despite that title. For the Miami Marlins, I chose John Birdie. Birdie might not be the prettiest player to watch, but he carries a lot of sneaky good value for the fish. In only 121 career games, he's stolen 27 bases, scored 77 runs, and had a solid .356 on-base percentage. He can also play pretty much any position other than catcher and pitcher. He gets on base, he steals, he generates runs, and can fill in at most positions, so let's acknowledge how under the radar Birdie's value is to that team. The most underrated player on the Milwaukee Brewers is Corbin Burnes. I know Brandon Woodruff got the opening day start for the Brew Crew, but I think Corbin Burnes is their ace. Other than an abysmal 2019, his ERA in 2018 and 20 was terrific, with an amazing strikeout rate to complement it. The dude got Cy Young votes last year and is knocking on the door as a top 10 starting pitcher, so treat him like it. His stuff is awesome, and Brewers fans know it. For the Minnesota Twins, I decided to go with Jorge Polanco. In a lineup full of big power bats, Polanco flies under the radar, but provides a little bit of everything. He gets on base with way more consistency than a lot of his teammates, he can still hit for power, he can steal a few bases, and hit for a solid average. Not to mention he plays great defense at short and second, but a lot of this is overshadowed by the big bats in the lineup. The player on the New York Yankees that flies the most under the radar is Clint Frazier. Frazier just doesn't get as much playing time as he deserves, to put it simply. He's flashed his power, speed, and of course awesome shoes in the past. So give that man more consistent at-bats, Aaron Boone. For the New York Mets, their most underrated player, in my opinion, is Jeff McNeil. 3 seasons in the big leagues. 3 seasons with a batting average well over 300 and an on-base over 380 each of those seasons. That is pure greatness at the plate. Yet, he's hitting 7th in the order. What are you doing, Rojas? He also plays multiple positions, can run the bases well, and has sneaky power. I mean, what am I missing here? He might be their 3rd best hitter behind Lindor and Polar Bear Pete. Well, he and Dom Smith can fight it out for the 3rd spot, but you get the point. McNeil is definitely underrated. For the A's, I went with J.B. Wendelken. This was tough since the A's have been underachieving this season so far, but J.B. Wendelken is still underrated to me. After Liam Hendriks, Wendelken was probably the A's best reliever last season, with a 1.8 ERA and 31 strikeouts in 25 innings. Those are closer-like numbers, yet despite Hendriks leaving in free agency and new acquisition Trevor Rosenthal being hurt, Wendelken still isn't the closer, but his performance tells me he should be. JB is underrated, ladies and gentlemen. For the Philadelphia Phillies, Their most underrated player is Zach Wheeler. I know Aaron Nola is probably the ace of the staff, but let's give Zach Wheeler some love. After being only pretty good as a Met, Wheeler was great last year with an ERA of 2.92. I know one shortened year isn't a great sample size, but Wheeler has great stuff, and if he isn't an ace, he's pretty close despite not pitching like one until last year. Oh boy. All right, for the Pittsburgh Pirates, I went with Brian Reynolds. Well, guys, I hate to tell you this, but it was hard to find a player on the Pirates that was underrated since you can't really have an opinion on a bunch of nobodies. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry, Pirates fans. There will be brighter days ahead. But for now, Brian Reynolds can be your most underrated player since he did get some Rookie of the Year votes in 2019 with his pristine .314 batting average with a .377 on base. Those numbers on a competitive team result in a star caliber player, but unfortunately, because he's on the Pirates, Reynolds doesn't get much love, but today he does get some and deserves it. He's a very good hitter. For the San Diego Padres, I chose Jake Cronenworth. In a lineup full of great hitters on a great team, Jake Cronenworth flies under the radar the most. I know he's only played one shortened season, but he did earn some Rookie of the Year votes with a solid .285 average. He also plays multiple positions. He may not be the sexiest player on the team, but today he does stand out because his value needs some more recognition. The San Francisco Giants' most under-the-radar player is Donovan Solano. In his last 2 seasons combined, which is not a very small sample size, we're talking about 134 games here, he has a .328 batting average. Enough said. Nothing else matters. Let's just say there's a reason why he's called Donnie Barrels. Let's also remember to bring him up every now and then. Okay, sounds good. Moving on to the Seattle Mariners, I went with Tom Murphy. Now, he might be a one-season wonder since other than in 2019, he didn't do much offensively, and he also didn't play at all last year, but at least in 2019, Tom Murphy was maybe the best hitting catcher in the league in the 75-game span that he played in. He hit .273 with 18 homers and 40 RBIs, which is great for anyone, let alone a catcher, and no one talks about him, ever. Hopefully he can gain some recognition by continuing to rake this season, but until then, he is flying way under the radar. For the St. Louis Cardinals, I chose Tommy Edman. Edman gives you a little bit of everything. He can hit for some power, hit for a solid average, steal bases, and score runs. He can also fill in at multiple positions. He means a lot more to that team than many people realize. For the Tampa Bay Rays, their most underrated player is Austin Meadows. Maybe because he didn't have a great 2020 since he was a platoon player, but a lot of people forget Austin Meadows was clearly the Rays' best hitter in 2019 with the great all-around numbers he put up. So yeah, Arozarena and Lau might be the stars of this lineup in this current moment, but don't be surprised if Meadows reminds people that he was their first star. For the Texas Rangers, their most under-the-radar player is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. IKF gives you a little bit of everything on the baseball field, but not many people seem to know about him. He plays third base, shortstop, and catcher, which makes him kind of a unicorn. He hits leadoff, he hits for a solid average, and has really good speed for someone who's played catcher. He does a lot for that team, despite not really being heard about too much, so let's give him some love, because I think he's clearly underrated. For the Toronto Blue Jays, I felt like their most underrated player was Marcus Semien. For a guy who's finished in the top 3 in MVP voting just 2 years ago, Marcus Semien was pretty much an afterthought as an offseason acquisition for the Jays. He normally plays shortstop, but so far this year he slid over and played second base. He's always been a great defender, but where he goes unnoticed is for his hitting ability. He has power, he steals, and he produces a lot of runs. And people seem to forget that. Trust me, he wouldn't finish third in line for the MVP if he just defended well. His numbers were legit. And last but not least, for the Washington Nationals, their most underrated player is Victor Robles. I think the number one thing that makes Victor Robles underrated is just how young he is. He's entering his 5th season in the bigs, but he's still only 23, which is pretty crazy. He's already a great defensive center fielder. A big reason is because of his great speed. He also steals a lot of bases, as you might expect. The fact that he still has so much room to grow, and the fact that he's been overshadowed by 2 other great young hitters in Juan Soto and Trey Turner on this team, makes him very undervalued in my opinion. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said before, comment your opinions on who you feel is underrated on each team. And if you enjoyed the video, consider liking maybe, subscribing if you're new to the channel. If you're a big sports fan, I would really appreciate and love all your support. Thanks again guys, and I'll talk to you guys later.